So greetings from a chilly, blustery Pennsylvania day, post-Thanksgiving day. Yesterday was Thanksgiving. I didn't overeat yesterday. I'm still getting out a little bit here. So yeah, you can tell by the title of the video, I'm introducing a new series on the Union Canal here in Pennsylvania. And we're actually walking on the Union Canal towpath trail and the remnants of the Union Canal just over here, off to my left. So yeah, if you've been with me for a number of years, like back, 2017, 2018, I did start a Union Canal series back then. I think I called it Following the Union Canal, but I only got like 3 episodes in, and then I stopped. We'll talk about that, why I stopped that series and why I'm restarting again. Just currently making my way down towpath trail here. I parked at Reber's Bridge parking area, if you're familiar with the area. And if we keep going, this will take us to Grings Mill. And one of the restored locks along the Union Canal is down here, lock number 47. So we all talk a little bit about the history of the Union Canal and canals in general and what they were for. Some of you, I realize a lot of you might already know, but some of you may not. Well, canals are just waterways, transportation systems, mostly for carrying goods and other things. They usually followed rivers as a means of transportation. This is before the days of the railroad. They made canals. Why not just use the rivers? They did sometimes. The rivers get shallow, they get rapids in them, and they become unnavigable that way, where the shallow parts are and the rapids are. So this, some rivers are deep and calm, and some are not. And the ones that are not, you can't, transport goods on. So making canals was a way of making that possible, because you could control the depth of the canal. Usually they were what you call slack water. There's no rapids or anything on the canals. And as we're walking along the towpath trail, just over here is the remnants of the Union Canal. You can see it's all dug out by hand. And this is the towpath trail. Of course, the barges or the canal boats would be in here, and they didn't have motors back then, so they have mules or horses that would use this towpath, and they would tow the boat along, the boat that was in the canal over here. And then there'd be men on the barge with these big long wooden poles that they would constantly be using to keep the barge from bumping into the sides of the canal. And in order to make these canals work, obviously you need to fill them with water. So that's why they would run along a river or a stream of some sort, a larger stream. A lot of times they would dam sections of the river or the creek and use it to fill up the canal. Of course, in the rivers too, follow the lowest points in the terrain, which is what you wanted the canal to do as well. And sometimes the canals, they did need to go up in elevation. When a river goes up in elevation, you get those rapids, which you don't want on the canal. So they have a system of what they call locks on the canals that would raise the boats from a lower elevation to a higher level. When we get to the one lock up here, I'll show you how that works in more detail. But we're not right next to the creek right now. Let me turn around again. Yeah, so once again, right here is the canal, the Tulpehocken Creek, which is what the Union Canal follows right here. It's kind of over there, so they didn't always follow right next to the creek or river. Sometimes they did, but sometimes they veered away from it. They were always near one, as much as possible, to get that water source. And for a while, canals were a very popular form of transportation, but then eventually railroads came along. Railroads were faster and cheaper, and they coexisted for a while, but when the railroads were first introduced, the heyday of the canal system was over, pretty much, and a lot of them started to come into decline after that. And yeah, they're no longer used, really. And there's a few in existence. Like over in England, there's people that live on canal boats. You can watch some of their videos to see. It's kind of cool. So let's talk some history about the Union Canal. Depending on what you read, I guess the idea was first conceived maybe as early as 1690. Some people say that William Penn thought it would be a good idea to connect the Susquehanna River to the Schuylkill River, which is what the Union Canal did. Now I'm going to throw a map up here, a Google Maps, and show you roughly the route of the Union Canal. Roughly, because it does meander along quite a bit as it follows the Topahawken Creek here and then later the Satara Creek on the western end. But I'll throw up a rough map so you can see where it is located. Yeah, so the idea of the Union Canal was to connect the Susquehanna River to the Schuylkill River. And then there were canals along the Susquehanna River and the Schuylkill River too. So you could transport goods all the way from Harrisburg area down to Philly. It's quite the system. But yeah, and some people say that William Penn idea back in 1690 wasn't for a canal, but was for a road, I've heard, so that's kind of iffy. But in the 1780s is when they first got serious about doing some Union Canal making, and it started in 1792. And from 1792 to 1794, they were able to build about 15 miles of it. A couple locks, I think, just west of the Myerstown area, Myerstown in Lebanon County. But then, as with a lot of things, let me switch hands here. But then as with a lot of things, they ran out of money and they had to stop. And they didn't get back to working on it till the early 1820s. I think in between that there was a second attempt maybe to get it going, but it didn't happen. Always financial problems. So around 1821-ish, they started up again. All right, so we are coming up on that restored lock. I can see it way up there. So it's not too far from the parking area. Yeah, so by 1828, they finished it. All roughly 81 miles of it. I think 93 locks in total were along it. It's like it started near Reading, where it joins into this, where the Topahawken Creek flows into the Schuylkill River. Follow the Topahawken Creek, you go through Berks County into Lebanon County, up into Lebanon City, because that got a little bit difficult there, because it then joined up with what's called the Quittapahilla Creek, and then that makes its way to the Satara Creek, eventually to Susquehanna. But even from the beginning, the Union Canal was plagued with some difficulties. They made it too narrow originally, only 8.5 feet wide, which is pretty narrow, but it accommodated the boats of that time. But they didn't have the foresight to realize that boats would get bigger as the whole canal idea progressed. So it was kind of limited as to what kind of boats it could take. But I think starting in 1841 up into the 1850s, they did a widening project to widen it to about 17 feet. But that cost them a lot of money, and in some ways almost bankrupted them. They've never really fully recovered from that, the Union Canal Company. All right, so we made it here to Lock 47. Just a little bit more history to tell you, and then we'll talk about what my plan is for this series and maybe why I didn't really finish it way back when either. And we'll talk a little bit how locks work too, if you want to stick with me. All right, and here is lock number 47. Right here is the canal. It's been dug out, and they would enter the lock. You can see the wooden doors on here. Because these ones are not in the best shape anymore. But they would have, yeah, well, these are kind of, well, you can see them up there. We'll get up there in a moment. But they would have ways of opening the doors. Yeah, and the boats would come in here, exit out that end. I'm gonna fall in here. But you can see, that one door's completely gone up here now. But they would use those wooden beams to open and close the doors, like leverage. Yeah, this one needs some help. It's even worse than the last time I was here. Yeah. Yeah, but the idea is this part of the canal would be at a lower level than the part that was beyond the lock up here. At different height levels the water was. Yeah, so when you had a boat coming in from a lower level, remember this level of the canal was lower, there's like an elevation change here, they would open these doors, swing them open, and then the canal boat would come in to the middle here. Then they would close these doors, and then usually up here there was a way of letting, they wouldn't open those doors yet, but there was a way of letting water in from the upper level, and it would fill this up. It would raise the water level up to the level of the canal up there, and once the two were level, they would open those doors, and then the canal boat would go out up on its way. That's how the lock system worked. So whenever you had significant elevation change, you would have to have one of these locks. And if the change was pretty steep, you'd have to have multiple locks in a row. There's a place up in Swatara State Park where there's 4 locks right in a row because it was a pretty dramatic elevation change. A lot of times there was a lock house nearby because someone would operate these locks for the barges. So usually somewhere nearby was a lock house. A lot of them are gone, but sometimes you can find foundations of them. Sometimes one lock house would operate multiple locks. So there'd be a dude living there at the lock house, operating them. Sometimes he operated one lock, sometimes multiple ones. They didn't get paid much, like $10, $14 a month is what they got paid to operate these locks. The Union Canal lasted then roughly till about 1885. That depends on which article you read or which sign. In fact, I think the sign here says 1888. I've read as early as 1881. I think the general consensus is it lasted until about 1884. Trees are falling down back 1883, 1884. I think 85 is when the company actually shut down. Like I said, depending on what sources you find, it might say something different. Yeah, and it's largely because of the railroad. Like I said, the Union Canal is built a little bit too narrow too, but largely because of the railroad. You could move goods and transportation a lot faster, a lot cheaper via railroad, if I could talk. All right. Cool little spot here. Glad they restored it, but it does need a little bit more work again. Yeah, just another look at the lock here, lock 47. Yeah, the one door is like completely like rotten down in there. Those trees need to be removed. They're growing on the side. See those kind of, whoops. You can see like right there, they grow, they kind of lift the blocks and displace them. So they kind of need a little bit of work on this one here again. But still, I mean, it's in pretty good condition. A lot of the locks, there's hardly anything left of them anymore. I mean, this one you can clearly see the stone. A lot of times, when the canal was abandoned, a lot of times the stone was taken and used, oh, there I am, and used for other purposes. So you won't even see the stone work anymore. It's just kind of a ditch. A ditch that's a little bit more narrow than the rest of the canal bed back up that way. And there was another section of this canal completed that went roughly from the Lebanon area up to Pine Grove, and that was completed in 1832. It goes by different names. Sometimes it's called the Pine Grove extension of the canal, the feeder canal, or I think I saw it called the Union Forge Canal. I'll quick throw up a map of that one like I did the other one. That one was used largely for coal. It brought a lot of coal down, anthracite coal. But it's also, like, it's called the feeder canal because it helped solve the problem of providing water for the canal at its highest point, which was the Lebanon area. The Union Canal is what's called a summit level canal because it kind of went up from the Susquehanna River, then went back down level to the Schuylkill River. So when you're at the top of that summit level, you have water supply issues, which is what the Union Canal struggled with at that area. They had to run a number of pumps to provide enough water for that section. But that feeder canal helped that too. But that feeder canal was destroyed 1862. There's a big flood on the Swatara Creek. Up in there's a spot called the Big Dam that burst and just did a lot of damage, and they never rebuilt it. So that section ended in 1862 roughly. Yeah, so like I said at the beginning of the video, we started a series like this a couple years ago, but never finished it. So yeah, so what happened? Yeah, so when I started this like 3 or 4 years ago, the original series, my intention was to follow the whole Union Canal, like literally follow it as much as I could. But places like this, you can. But what I was running into then was the whole private property issue. A lot of places, especially on the eastern end here that follows the Topahakan Creek, a lot of the canal flows on, the former canal's on private property. So I was going to have to ask for tons of permissions and stuff, and that was going to be pretty daunting. We still might do some of that. I'll talk about that. But also, I didn't really have good maps on where all the locks were located. That was one problem I was running into. I didn't know what all the numbers were for each one, some of the other features, but I have better maps now. than I did before. So the plan is to still follow as much of it as we can, but in certain cases like private property issues, we'll just have to do what we can. It'll be kind of like my French and Indian War series, where I might just throw up some maps to show you where it goes and where some of the locks were. We'll get as close to them as we can. There's places where the roads travel right along the former canal. We'll do what we can to show you like the public areas that you can see where the canal was located, or some of the canal locks. We'll do what we can with that. Because as much as possible, I do want to document all the locks and different historical features of the Union Canal as I can. So sometimes I might try to ask for permission from owners. We'll see how that goes. Sometimes private property owners are gracious, and sometimes, well, not so gracious, but we'll see. I would like to document as much as I can. And maybe in the spring, like, you're allowed to walk along a Topahagen Creek or in it. It's not private property. It's just that you can't cross private property to get to the Topahagen Creek or other creeks. So maybe this spring we'll walk along sections of it, kind of like I did earlier this year. Did some creek stomping on the Topahagen Creek. When we get to the Swatara Creek on the western end, we'll actually do some kayaking. We can get to a lot of the locks and historical features via kayak. So that'll be fun. And another big problem I had in that first series was, I think we made it up to the Blue Marsh Lake where the dam is. But then, once you get there, the Union Canal is flooded. They do lower the lake levels in the winter, so we might be able to see a few things, we'll see. But I also found a map, like I said, I have better maps now. I found a map which shows where all the canal locks were along the Topahagen Creek in that area, even though it's now flooded. We should be able to get close to some of them. So I think that's kind of one of the problems I ran into as well. Was just, I think what stopped me was access issues and just lack of some information, detailed maps showing where things were. So I would find locks sometimes. Like there's one way up further I found, but I didn't know which number it was. I wanted to know all that information. So things have changed a little bit, so we'll try this again. We'll do what we can. Like I said, I want to document as much of it as I can, because I don't really know. There's a few websites that have information about it, but I don't really know that. Well, we'll see. So much of the Union Canal has already been lost. When it was first abandoned, no one thought about preserving parts of it, so like I said, a lot of the locks were destroyed. Parts of the canal just filled in, paved over. Even just recently, one of the locks, I read an article about one of the locks being destroyed. No one wanted to preserve it, so it's buried now. I think it's under a housing subdivision type thing, or maybe we'll try. Well, we'll see. Maybe we'll try to find that one, remnants of it at least. But that's the way it is. So we can document as much as we can. I think it'll be a good thing. At least that's the goal. And each episode that I do will encompass a certain length of the former Union Canal. But in the future, we might have to come back to some of those sections. Like if I do get permission from a property owner to look for a lock or something, or if I discover that there's something else in the area, we might come back to that spot. I do want to try to keep the episodes moving along as best we can. That'll be dependent on weather too. Like if we get a bunch of snow this winter, I won't be making any Union Canal episodes, because snow just tends to obscure everything. So we'll see. And if this series works out well, the Union Canal, there's plenty of other canals here to do. Just in this area, like I said, there's the Schuylkill Canal along the Susquehanna River. I think it's the Pennsylvania Canal, and then the Susquehanna and Tidewater Canal, the Delaware Canal, the Lehigh Canal, the Juniata. There's all kinds of canals. All that need preserving or documenting what history is there before it's gone. So these series, this one and hopefully others, it's not just about me and my curiosity. It's about, like I said, just documenting what we can before any more disappears. And as in all my videos, if I cover a section and there's something that I missed that you know about, by all means, let me know down in the comments. I'm not a know-it-all. I don't know everything, not at all. So if I missed something or something of interest, let me know, and then I'll try to maybe go back and do my best to film it. All right, but I think that'll be it for this video. I've yapped enough. I'm not sure when I'll work on the first video. I'm gonna start back at the Schuylkill River and work my way west, I think. That's what the plan is. All right, I'll see you around, hopefully.